Hi guys, welcome to Learn with W3 Schools. My name is Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti, and today we're going to talk about how do we use the use strict feature inside JavaScript. Now, use strict allows us to follow a very strict and a disciplined coding standard within the JavaScript, and it's quite important. And this is something that many young developers come across, and they had a problem with it. They don't understand, and they actually need to follow this thing. Okay, so let's talk more about use strict and what it is use strict and how do we use use strict within JavaScript. Before we go further, if you still haven't subscribed, please do subscribe the channel as I post coding and JavaScript and programming other languages as well, video lectures of other languages regularly every week. So let's begin. Now, what exactly is use script? Use script is a directive that enforces a stricter rule in JavaScript. The strict root context prevents certain actions from being taken and throws exceptions, meaning that if you use this use a strict feature, it basically follows a stricter rule, enforces you to follow a stricter, cleaner discipline within your Java coding. Okay, that way you follow a very standard practice and avoid certain pitfalls. And if you once you use the use script feature, you do certain pitfalls, it will actually throw exceptions and give you an error that hey, this is wrong, as per the strict rule you cannot do this thing. So in other words, it enforces as additional layer of security and implements a rule regulation that you need to follow within the JavaScript. It avoids common coding mistakes. It helps us in fact to avoid common mistakes, and you makes your code more secure in a long run. So strict mode is a new feature in ECMS script 5 that allows you to place a program or a function in a strict operating context. How do we use it? We add the word literally use strict at the top of your script or a function. So you can add this in top of your script or on a function, the word use script. Okay, it implies that error checking and prevents unsafe action. So it ensures that the error checking is done properly. So if there's a mistake in your code, it will generate the error, and then it will avoid you to make sure that your code is not unsafe. It has no bugs or no issues with it. How do we enable the strict mode? Well, to enable it, as I said, you can use inside the script tag by using the script. Okay, so we just specify use script at top of our script, or if you are doing or want to use it within the function, then we use the use script inside the function. Both are actually accurate. In both the context, we basically tell our JavaScript and the browsers that I'm going to follow a strict ECMS5 rules of coding JavaScript code. Fine. So in this case, for example, if I use let x is equals to 10, this would work fine. But if I use y is equals to 20, this will generate error as y is not declared. So the ECMA5 or the use script will ensure that you always use let to declare your variables. If you do it without it, it will generate an error. If you have in a standard practice in JavaScript, we can declare variables here. So if you don't use it, this will be perfectly legal. But because we are telling our JavaScript that, hey, I'm going to follow a strict rule, it will enforce the developer down the line to ensure that you use this y is equals to 20 with always the let or var or a constant. That way, your code becomes more secure and more accurate. So in order to implement it, again, every time you have a JavaScript, just add this line at the top, or use it if you are doing it inside a function, then make sure you add it at the top of the function, the first line within your function. Benefits of using use strict: it avoids accidental global variables, it prevents modification to read-only properties, it eliminates the this coercion issue. Again, we're going to talk about this in a moment later on. Ensures better performance in some engines and some browser engines as well. Makes code easier to debug because you know that you're following stricter rule. So any errors, any issues, you can very easily come to it. It catches some common coding bloopers, throwing exception at those times, just like I mentioned right now. So this is a common blooper that we mentioned where we just declare a y is equals to 10. Okay, and it's a common thing. Most developers just become lazy. If you do this common mistake, it will ensure, hey, this is not correct. You must make sure there's a let or var or a constant before it. It prevents or throws errors. Okay, so when relatively unsafe actions are taken, such as gaining access to a global object, it disables features that are confusing or are poorly thought out. So that's the major benefit. In a whole nutshell, it means your code is more correct, more accurate, more as per standard. How do we use it? Preventing undeclared variables. So if you want to ensure that how do we prevent undeclared variables, we use the use strict. So without the use strict, you can declare my variable is equals to 10. This is a perfectly legal statement technically in Java. But because you use this use script at the top of your JavaScript code, now you, if you declare it, this will throw an error, another where is not defined. So a not defined information or not defined error will actually be generated on your console because there is no var nor let or constant. So in order to correct the error, you must use let or var or constant before this thing. Only then the variable is allowed. Otherwise, it will generate error. Why? Because again, we are using user script. So this prevents many things within our coding. Defining multiple variables on the same name. So if, for example, if you are using without strict and you define foo is 2 and foo is 4 as well, constant value of foo, you can get the value 4 because again, this value has been changed. This is perfectly, technically, we have been doing it a long time. As you can see, this is a legal statement because again there is no variable declaration. So when you redeclare or reassign a value, JavaScript assumes that now you are changing the value from 2 to 4. So now you have changed the value here. However, when you use the use strict feature, now if you do the same thing again, this will generate an error on your console log. So if you check your console, you will find that this will generate an error that the foo is not defined. Again, not defined error. Now do note the error is not generated at this line. Okay, the error is generated on this line because JavaScript use strict feature will assume that you need to have let var or constant before it. It will stop you right there before it even checks the next line. Say, hey, you cannot do this, you need to have either let var or constant. Once you do that, then it will assume that okay, now the variable is declared. You can reassign the value, you can change the value of this same variable. Hence it will now assume that you are changing the variable's value. Okay, so if you don't do it, it will generate the error variable is not defined on the first occurrence of the variable. So using the strict mode, multiple variable of the same name are avoided and ensures that you declare it as a let var or thing, and the errors can be very easily debugged and diagnosed. Similarly, using of eval, any virtually any attempt to use the name eval is prohibited, as the ability to assign the eval function to a variable or a property of an object. So no matter where you go, you cannot use the eval in anywhere in your scene. So somehow ECMA5 hates eval. It says big no to this eval. You cannot use it. So if you declare object evaluation or object foo as equals to eval, or declare a variable, or use var eval inside the for loop or inside a function as an eval, test function with an eval argument, function eval argument, any use of eval is completely prohibited. None of these things are allowed because you use stricter mode. So these all will generate errors for us. Okay, so that's one other way of doing it. So if you look into that example, so without the use of this strict, so if I don't use this use the strict feature, you can easily declare all this. So for example, if I come here var object, if I declare one empty object and I go object one dot eval is equals to 20 10, sorry, this is completely allowed, but it is an improper use of evaluation. Do keep in mind. Now just for an example says we are using it. So if I go and print on console the object.eval, it will print the 10 value. But if I use it as a use strict, this thing is actually not allowed in use strict. In terms of normal JavaScript, this is completely legal. You can use that. Similarly, you can come here console.log object1.foo 2 plus 3 is equals to object1.foo 2 plus 3 output is 5. This again works fine, no problem with that. But in use script, this statements will not be working because again the object is not created properly. Similarly, any other use of eval in a normal JavaScript will be okay. Any other use of eval will actually be allowed and you will get an output. Any other function created with an eval as a name again is allowed. If you don't use without the user script, this is all allowed. So all these statements are technically allowed, no problem with that. However, when you come and you put this use script as the first line, then everything that you have used previously will start generating errors. So object.eval10, now this again is a syntax error, cannot assign eval in a strict mode. This will give you an error. Then if you use object.foo eval, again this will be allowed, but eval is reserved for the strict evaluation. Eval 20 again will generate a syntax error. If you use for loop with the eval inside it, again a syntax error is generated. If you declare a function with the eval name, again error. You declare a function test with an eval as an argument, again an error. So in a nutshell, if you use strict mode, JavaScript completely ban you from using eval. Next, catching assignments to a non-writable properties. Okay, what does this mean? That strict mode enforces errors for non-writable properties, prevents silent failure. So it is an extremely important feature. Because of strict mode, the silent failures of your code will be avoided. So for example, if you use strict, then you create a constant object, an empty object, then you define object that define property for this read only, bracket start bracket close, value 42 writable becomes false. Now if you try to change that value, it will throw an exception. So if I declare a non-writable property and if you change it later on, because we have defined it read only as a writable, we can making it sure it's false. Now you cannot change this value. This will generate an error for us. That's another major advantage of using a strict mode. Okay. Now, illuminating this coercion. What do we mean by that? In a non-strict mode, this defaults to a global object. So if you use this, it actually refers to my global object or my global window. However, in a strict mode, this word is undefined in a regular function. So for example, without the use of strict mode, we use function log bracket start bracket close, we say log dot this. Okay, so this means currently we are printing our object window, main object frame we are printing. So this is the output that we get. So if I call this function log this is the output that gets printed. It prints the global object global, calculates intermediates and prints out some crap garbage data, but in the general it actually prints the output of your window, current window details. In a normal sense, it actually is referring to my current object. Okay, however, if you use a strict mode, this will generate an undefined error because this says that I don't know what this is. So a strict mode will avoid the use of this variable. In a general, we refer this to our current object, a current class. In If you follow strict mode, this is completely a big no-no in this case. Okay, so again another big major advantage of using the this cocorian. Similarly, functions. So attempting to override the arguments objects will result in an error. So for example, if you have an argument coming in and you want to avoid override an argument, this will generate an error. Defining identical name arguments will also result in error. So for example, if this is an argument coming from a function, you cannot change those arguments. You need to assign it to another value and update that. Using a strict mode, this is also not allowed. At the same time, you cannot declare two variables of the same time as well. You have same name as well, sorry. So if you have two variables in a function that are again of same name, again an error is generated. So see, already strict mode is following a very strict rules that you can usually you get into when you're doing JavaScript coding. These are common errors that normally students tend to make. But by ensuring the script this use strict, you can avoid many of these features. So just a quick recap, it prevents undeclared variables, it throws errors when modifying or non-writable properties, it changes behavior of this in a function. So in a function, it also changes the behavior of that. So general feature, undeclared variables. Without strict mode, you can create global variables. With strict mode, it throws a reference error. Non-writable properties fails silently. You can create a non-writable property and then you can actually edit it if you are using JavaScript standard one. But if you enforce the use strict rule, basically it will throw an error, ensuring that there is no silent failures at the back end. And then at the same time, this in a function. So if you use this in a function in a normal JavaScript, it refers to a global object, but if you use with a stricter mode, it is undefined and again an error is generated. So these errors are actually allowing us to ensure that our code is correct and it has no bugs or loopholes, or it is up to a proper standard. Okay, so why you should use strict mode? It encourages cleaner, safer and more efficient code. It reduces bugs and improves debugging, essential for modern JavaScript developer. So any modern JavaScript developer who doesn't use script is actually missing out on many things, and in letting you know that hey, he's not a professional JavaScript developer. It's a one good sign of a professional JavaScript developer using use strict mode. So ready to make your JavaScript code better? Let's start using strict mode every day on every single JavaScript code. This is the end of the session. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have watched it, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And don't you can check out these new cool videos that I've already posted. Let me know in your comments how you feel about them and what else you want to learn. This is Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti signing off.